Hey everyone! Before we open today's file, please make sure to follow us on Instagram at d.s.radio, where you can find all the images that go along with today's case. You can drop us an email at contact.dsradio@gmail.com. You can find all of our socials in the Linktree bio on our Instagram profile, including links to merch. If you're feeling especially generous, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio, where you can get access to our exclusive Instagram page and make suggestions for upcoming episode topics that you would like us to cover. Speaking of Patreon, thanks to our Patreons, Riff Cult, Cropley Crab, Cash Broadus, Raspberry Jr., Jason R. Nelson, Creepy Paper, Jamie Sook, Michael Laughlin, Lindsay Keller, Mike Wright, Greer Weaver, Kelsey Carruthers, Linz Gibbon, Drake Holvig, Only Child, Michael M, Wesley Akers, Riaz K, Emily Medeiros, Pip, Heather Wynn, Graves, Devon Sweatshirt, The Ordained Sinister Minister, and Philip Hoffman. Hi everyone, and welcome to Dystopian Simulation Radio. I'm your host, Linz.
And I'm your other host, Chris. How's it going, Linz?
Good. Neither of us are in the UK. That's fun.
Well, it's very fun, actually.
Yeah.
I've missed travelling a lot during the last couple of years.
Yeah, I bet. So Chris is in Japan, and I'm in Sweden. So yeah, doing it across the world, basically.
Yeah, but we're all here. We're all here right now. And we've got a bit of an update to a previous story. Is that right?
Yes. I think this is your favourite case, isn't it?
Oh. Broad up your shoulders, thin at the waist.
If you don't get these jokes, go back and listen to our episode called Somerton Man, Who Even Was That Guy? And you can learn about the whole case.
Yeah, I'd probably suggest listening to that anyway, whereas a lot of this information will probably be going over your head. So you can find that in the archives. It was about a month and a half ago we did that.
Yeah, just a couple of episodes ago, I believe. So, Chris.
Yes?
A little over a week after our Somerton Man episode came out, the case got solved.
Now, I saw this, and people, as soon as this came out, people were, sending it to us, and I saw the articles, but I didn't read them. I just sent them straight on to you. So I'm interested to see how much of solved this actually is. Well,
Professor Dr Abbott, who we all know and love, claims to have discovered the identity of the Somerton Man. However, it's not yet been quote-unquote officially solved, according to South Australian Police and Forensic Science South Australia, who said they'll announce it officially when they receive DNA results. So basically, I think they want to check that the DNA from the hairs, which were taken from the bust of the Somerton Man, correspond to the DNA of the exhumed Somerton Man.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, you don't want to, as an official body, the police don't want to, jump out and be like, it's solved, but we haven't done any actual checking of that, which is going off what some dude says.
Exactly. Well, he's not some dude. I mean, he's I guess he's the biggest researcher of this case. But yeah, the police are right. They really do have to confirm this, because we're all known to get a bit excited when it comes to this case and come up with some pretty far-fetched theories, as in, he's a Russian spy and,
That is not far-fetched. I refuse to believe that has to be the answer.
Well, Chris, I think it's time to get into the update.
Okay.
Hit
me.
Before we do, if anyone wants to follow along with any visuals from this case, you can do so at Instagram, d.s.radio. And we also have a Patreon, right, Chris?
We do. And you can show your support if you're really enjoying the podcast. And so many of you have been giving us really kind messages. And, we've got a good following on Patreon. So join us over there. We do try to post additional content whenever possible. We're going to be ramping that up upon both of our return to the UK in a couple of weeks' time.
Yep, you can get all the dolphin erotica and OnlyFans content you want in the upcoming months on Patreon.
Yep. So you can get that at patreon.com/dystopian simulation radio.
Yep, come and join us. Shit's about to kick off.
You can listen to Anna Kournikova and her adventures with a pod of dolphins.
If you don't get that reference, listen to the Q&A episode.
Yeah, I ruined Lindsay's day, week, year. I'm not sure what, but I definitely ruined something for her.
You did. Honestly, every time I see something about a dolphin, a picture of a dolphin, a little ornament of a dolphin, anything. I saw an ornament of a dolphin yesterday and I just groaned in despair.
Did he look at it and go, that's not a physically accurate penis?
Stop! Right, Somerton Man. Let's do this. So, over 70 years ago, the Somerton Man was found dead on a beach in Adelaide, and several days after we re-recorded the episode, the case has been, we believe, solved.
Woo! Unofficially.
Unofficially. Yeah, unofficial woo! So, Chris, our listeners have been sending us links and tagging us in articles about the update, but you have been refraining from reading any of them in anticipation of this recording session.
Exactly. I haven't listened to, watched a thing on the case, so hit me with it.
So you may remember in our episode that I mentioned Professor Abbott obtained his from the plaster cast bust that was made of the Somerton Man's body.
Yes.
Well, approximately 50 hairs in hand, Professor Abbott teamed up with US forensic expert Colleen Fitzpatrick, and together they went to trusty old Ancestry.com, where they began developing an extended family tree using the DNA.
It's using Ancestry. That's really interesting.
Well, the cops use Ancestry as well, so...
Yeah, I know. I mean, I watched a documentary not too long ago called Our Father on Netflix, which was where basically an entire town more or less found out that they were related to each other through a rather unprofessional sperm doctor. I'll put it that way.
Oh, God. Oh, I think I watched a documentary on that, like a different one. Maybe it was like 60 Minutes Australia or something I watched it on, I don't know. So, from a pool of 4,000 names, they eventually whittled it down to one.
Wow. Before
I reveal the suspected identity of the Somerton Man, do you want to take a guess at what his name could be, like just for funsies?
Okay, well, I'm going to guess it's all been leading to Taman Should, and that's what his
Mr.
name was.
Should.
Mr. Should. Mr. Taman
T.
Should. Mr. T. Should of Australia. It's one town.
Well... You're wrong, Chris.
Shit.
Professor Abbott has revealed through his endless research that the Somerton Man is actually, drumroll, Chris.
Ooh.
Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer born in Melbourne in 1905.
Oh, an electrical engineer. Okay, right. So we were onto something with the content of his bag, having showing that he might be an electrician of some kind. I remember that we found we didn't find, but the police found that there was a kind of special electrician screwdriver in there. But all of the kind of thinking was that he was not an Australian, he was a foreigner in Australia. So that's interesting.
Yeah, now knowing that he's an Australian and a Sparky, basically he's an Australian Sparky and not a Russian spy, I feel kind of embarrassed.
I mean, yeah, I suppose so. But I mean, it leads to, there's so many different parts to the story. It's like a point and click video game. If you could get things wrong in it, there wasn't just one clear path. And like, there's so many different things that can lead you in a certain way. The secret codes, the electrician stuff, the names inside his clothing, various other things. So I mean, you can't blame people for kind of really running with this going in the wrong direction, but it is disappointing that he wasn't a Russian spy.
Yes, I don't know if it's disappointing, but it certainly makes you feel a bit silly. I mean, he did have that insulated electrician screwdriver and a bunch of tools that kind of screamed he did a job like that, but we were all like, he could have only worked on a merchant ship and he must have been all the way around the world to buy these clothes, so he's definitely a spy.
And said he was
and he
from
did
just
not
down
look
the
one
road.
bit Russian.
No.
Come on, he didn't look Russian. He looked British or Australian, I think.
Yeah.
So now that he had the name, Professor Abbott managed to actually track down a far-off relative of Carl Webb to substantiate his findings. So what do we know about Carl Webb? Well, Abbott discovered that Webb was, as I said earlier, born in 1905 in Footscray, which is an inner city suburb in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. Webb was the youngest child in his family and he had 6 siblings. And he was married to a woman named Dorothy Doff Robertson.
Doff.
Yeah,
Doff.
I've never heard that. Doff. That's a weird nickname.
Dorothy. I've heard Dot. I've never heard Doff.
Yeah.
But
Doff.
that's interesting. It was the style at the time. So he had relatives. He had a wife or a estranged partner, and nobody.
Estranged partner. Oh, an estranged. I thought you said estranged partner. I was like, you don't know her.
Well, I mean, she's called Doff, so who knows? But not a strange partner, an estranged partner.
Yes.
And nobody kind of raised the alarm that this dude went missing?
No, but we do have a little bit more information. So the Australian Electoral Roll in 1931 recorded Webb as being an electrical fitter who lived at Springvale Road in Springvale with his mother, Eliza Amelia Webb, and his father, August Webb, whose job title was listed as a baker, and his brother, Roy Webb, whose job was listed as a bread carter. So, little family bakery business going on, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely less exciting than Russian spy, but, you know, everyone loves a croissant.
Everyone's partial to a pasty, perhaps, Chris?
Well, I think you're going somewhere with that, but we'll leave that for later.
Chris, at this point, I have to point out, like, I don't want to spoil the episode, but I did do a little email interview with Professor Abbott, and I sent him this information just to have him confirm that, you know, this was correct. And this was the same Carl Webb that we're talking about. And I accidentally left in a little side note with the pasty joke, and he did not appreciate that. And I was really embarrassed.
Oh, dear.
Okay, so according to records, Carl Webb was married to Dorothy Jean Robertson, and they were wed in Victoria in 1941. The pair were estranged, as you said, and people now theorise that Webb may have travelled to Adelaide to look for Dorothy.
Oh, okay. So he was in pursuit of her, potentially. And that could have been
In
his
pursuit
motive.
of his wife. Maybe, who knows? So, Chris, remember the clothing found in the suitcase with the names Keane and T. Keane written on them in like a Sharpie?
Yeah.
Well, Carl Webb had a brother-in-law named Thomas Keane, who lived 20 minutes from him. Yeah.
That would explain it. Okay. So there was a T. Keane that they managed to find, but they just were maybe looking in the wrong place.
Yeah, there was a T, which is kind of weird because I'm sure that when we covered this case initially, we talked about how they had searched this name, T. Keane, and they couldn't find any T. Keane in Australia or something. Does that ring a bell to you?
Maybe. I mean, there must be multiple T. Keanes in Australia. Maybe it was maybe it was like within a certain distance, or maybe, I don't know.
Maybe.
If they were looking, because I know that the prevailing thoughts was that the Somerton man was foreign. So maybe they were checking passports, people had come into the country, or merchant navy
That's
ships,
true.
things
Yeah,
like
you're
that.
right, yeah.
I mean, especially if you just got an initial for a first name, I'm going to bet there's multiple T. Keanes around the place in Australia. It's not that uncommon a name.
Yeah, exactly. So, Chris, remember I mentioned his brother Roy Webb?
Yes.
Well, Roy was in the military and he joined at the age of 35. Mm-hmm. So there's records, obviously. Sorry?
It's quite old, isn't it?
Yeah, but, you know, we're coming up to, World War II. And I guess they need all the people they can get.
Yeah.
So I guess everyone was joining, basically, underage, older than usual. So yeah, he was joined up the army at the age of 35. In August 1941, it's recorded that he disembarked in Singapore. By February of 1942, however, he was reportedly MIA. He was missing, they couldn't find him, had no idea of his whereabouts. And by September 1943, sadly, it was confirmed that he was a prisoner of war.
Oh, okay. Did he survive, or was his body ever recovered? Do they know where he was interned?
Yes. So devastatingly, Roy lost his life during the construction of the bridge over the River Kwai in Kanchanaburi in Thailand, which is the bridge prisoners of war were forced to build by the Japanese in World War II. Yeah, which is really strange because I've actually been to the River Kwai bridge like 3 times or something, 3 or 4 times. I used to live nearby.
What surprises me, I mean, obviously due to the movie with Alec Guinness, it's quite a notable event in history. I mean, if it wasn't before, it was certainly popularised by the movie. So you'd think that somebody might have maybe linked together the dots here, but it is quite an obscure. I wouldn't have guessed that the links that we were presented with in our last episode would lead us to Thailand, so fair enough.
I mean, it does make sense, you know, because of the time. I think, yeah, you're right, the movie did popularise it, but it's such a big event. And obviously you have like writers like Lawrence Vanderpost who famously wrote books about it. But yeah, he unfortunately lost his life during the construction of that bridge, which is awful. It must have been terrible news for Charles Webb.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And he lost his mother too a year later.
Oh, he's not having much luck, is he?
So I got in touch with Professor Dr Abbott to pick his brains about the recent update in the case, and I asked him a few questions, but now knowing what we know, like we have more information, I think a lot of the questions I asked have been answered, but we can go ahead and read it anyway if you think so, Chris.
Yeah, so I'll play the role of Dr. Abbott then, and you can play the role of you. Do your best.
Role of a lifetime, Chris. The first question I have is, how does it feel to have finally solved the mystery, at least partly, that you've been puzzling over for so long?
Elation for 2 seconds, followed by the realization that it is only the beginning. We need to now find out about who he was and what he was doing there.
How long did it take yourself and Colleen Fitzpatrick to narrow down Carl Webb from thousands of names, and how was the process of doing so? Also, how did you get connected with Colleen Fitzpatrick?
We actually had him early on, within a month. We had his name by March 2022. But we had no proof. So it took from March to June to build the tree out to over 4,000, looking for connections that have been DNA tested. And he just completely ignored your last question there.
Yeah.
But nope, not answering that one.
I did find that funny. It did make me laugh when I read it. I was like, okay. 3. Had you been holding on to the hairs from the Somerton man bust for many years now, or were they samples that you acquired more recently in your investigation?
Had them since 2011. He's a man of few words, this professor, isn't he?
Yep, straight to the point. No bullshit, no painting a nice picture. But that's what we like about him, I guess. The question number 4 was, I read in an article by the BBC that you have seen evidence that Webb split from his wife, who then went on to relocate to South Australia. Do you believe this is why Webb travelled there?
I don't believe anything, personally. I was just suggesting that's all we've got, and it is plausible. Fair enough. After the last time where we kind of ran with the Russian spy angle, perhaps we should just take this, I don't know, let's wait and see approach.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because at first I was like, short, sharp, straight to the point, and I'm like, yeah, to be honest, all the fantasy that we all drummed up over the years probably did not help in any way. This is a much better approach, really, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Probably the correct academic approach to take.
So 5, which relative did you manage to contact to confirm Webb's identity, and how did the conversation go? Did they remember Webb well, and were they surprised? Were they ever aware of the Somerton man mystery, or was it a cold case they had never heard of?
The protocol when doing these investigations is not to say which case we are working on. So they never knew. I'm presently contacting them to let them know. So far, reactions have been all good.
Ooh, and actually, an article did come out about this relative.
Oh, okay. So do we know who this is?
Yes, we do. I think I'm going to have you read a little bit of this.
Okay, I'll read this part from this article that you provided me with. Until last month, Antero Bonifacio had no idea he was a missing link in solving one of South Australia's most enduring mysteries. The Gippsland man was flicking through his local Victorian newspaper when his curiosity was piqued by the breakthrough identification of the Somerton man. Just 3 months earlier, the 47-year-old father had been contacted by Adelaide University professor Dr Abbott, who was seeking his DNA to help identify somebody. He contacted me back in April this year and said he was a professor from Adelaide University dealing with Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick from the States about a potential lost ancestor of mine, he told the advertiser. They didn't let on whether it was a male or female, what the circumstances were, but it did let me know it was my great-grandmother who this person might be related to. A few internet searches to validate who Professor Abbott was reassured him, and he went on to order a DNA kit from ancestry.com.au. He then used the kit to send off a saliva sample to help genealogists create a family tree.
Ooh.
And can I just say, the PDF that you sent, there's a big picture of a Somerton man following on from this, which is quite amusing because the PDF has split it in two. So it looks like his mouth's open, like a South Park style character.
I was just about to say it's giving Terence and Philip. The article continues. About 6 weeks later, his great-great-grandmother's nephew was confirmed to be Carl Webb, making him the Somerton man's first cousin 3 times removed. So, Mr. Bonifacio, he had no idea about the Somerton man case.
Wow. Well, I mean, I suppose I didn't until you told me about it, but quite something.
Isn't it? It's like, imagine, and apparently his mom was really interested in history and everything, but she'd passed away recently, so she didn't even get a chance to get a big kick out of this.
Oh, that would have been... I mean, imagine finding that there was a huge mystery in your family, there was a missing person, something like that. I mean, obviously, well removed from having known the person and having any kind of emotional attachment, things like that. But it's just, can you imagine just being caught up in something that was, this huge mystery you had no idea about?
Yeah, and essentially solving the case.
All it took was your spit.
Yep, your spit in a tube. So the 6th question that I asked Professor Abbott was... Is it accurate, as reported by The Guardian, that the autopsy stated Webb had died due to heart failure as a result of poisoning? Have you ever, during your research over the years, seen the autopsy report/toxicology report? Did police aid you in your investigation when it came to seeing files and evidence? And what is your view on the cause of death?
The autopsy report is missing, so no one has it. Heart failure due to poisoning is inaccurate. The inquest concluded that the cause of death was unknown. Poisons, etc., are speculations. Possible, but who knows? No assistance in aiding investigation. I did get some assistance from retired cops who shared useful knowledge. So again, he's taking that very academic view, which, he should be, of, well, everything is unproven until it's proven. So the cause of death officially is unknown, so until they can prove otherwise, that's what it will stay.
Yeah, it's so interesting that they lost the autopsy results.
Yeah, I mean... I think, a conspiracy-minded person would say, that's very interesting, but at the same time, remember, at the time, they're storing all of this as physical evidence, as actual reports on paper, and at a certain point, you're going to have to just get rid of things, so I guess that happened. It's just unfortunate that it happened to such a high-profile case. Yeah,
I guess, there was a lot of evidence, too. There was a a suitcase full of clothes and tools and everything, and if you imagine over the years, how much stuff do they store in evidence? And I know that a lot of evidence in older cases can get lost, when they move offices and things, and things just go missing. And I guess the DNA was more important than some slippers and a
But still, you have to wonder what happened to that stuff. I mean, did it just get lost in transit or something like that? Did it get thrown away, burned? Was it given away to a charity shop? Does somebody have these items? Everybody listening right now, just check your jacket. Make sure it doesn't say T-Keen inside. If you do, let us know. I'll give you a tenner for it.
Tenner, wow. Actually, it's funny you talk about that because so many people have claimed to have purchased the Rubaiyat of Khayyam over the years. They're like, this is... I think of people in thrift shops and charity shops in Australia, especially in Adelaide. They'll see a copy of this book and be like, that's the one, and claim to have it. But who knows where that is?
Well, Exactly, that's something else that's gone missing in this whole case. I mean, that code alone is just... I mean, I wonder, does his job share any light on this code that we found out? Is it like, circuit breaker codes or something like that?
I thought that too. Like, could it be something electricians speak? That, like an old electrician speak that we don't really use anymore or something? Like,
But I'm sure he was not the only electrician in Australia. Somebody else would have noticed.
Yeah, and they have had military try to break this code and students try to break this code. But the guy who was actually like the far-off relative of the Somerton man had never even heard of the case. So maybe it's not as big in the mainstream eyes as it is in the cold case world. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe enough eyes have never been on it to go, oh yeah, when I was an electrician back in the day, we used to write that shorthand like...
True.
Who knows?
It's one of those things, being like you say, when you live inside the bubble, everything seems big. But, for myself, I'd never heard of this case before you shared it with me. And it's huge. It's massive. Like, it's this gigantic mystery people around the world have been trying to solve for years, and I had never heard of it before you told me the story. So I don't want to say it's obscure, but to anybody who isn't interested in cold cases, it very well could be obscure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of people messaged me and said they'd never heard of it when we did the episode. And it was like, what? So even people listening to true crime and unsolved stuff, a few people haven't heard.
Yeah, I mean, to your mainstream person, people have heard of things like, the Black Dahlia murders and things like that, really popular cases that, got mainstream media exposure somehow. But this, for all intents and purposes, is guy turns up on a beach. We don't know who he is. So... it probably had minimal reporting after the fact.
Yeah. I mean, there's that little, I don't want to call it a museum, but, the bust was on display for a long time in Adelaide. But yeah, I wonder, maybe locally it was a thing, and then it just kind of falls into obscurity, and maybe people who aren't really interested in cases like that probably just go, oh, that's strange, and then get on with their lives, So, the next question that I asked Professor Abbott, if you remember, Chris, in the episode when we covered the Somerton man, we talked about how Professor Abbott, well, in the media and documentaries on the case and news coverage, there's this big push that Derek Abbott's wife was potentially the granddaughter of the Somerton man's potential child, Robin Thompson. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and there was all of this talk about perhaps... the Somerton man had been in town because he was trying to contact his ex-partner and, always trying to visit the child. Yes. And then there was all this stuff about, Robin having the same kind of double lines in his ears that the Somerton man had, which is incredibly rare. But then we also kind of looked at that evidence and said, I mean, apart from the ear thing, Robin kind of looks way more like his mum. Yeah,
so when we talk about the Somerton man's ex-partner, we're not talking about Carl Webb's actual wife. So this is before we knew Carl Webb. In the back of the copy of the Rubaiyat, along with the code, there was a phone number for a lady named Jessica who lived a couple of streets away. And she had a son who wasn't the son of her then partner. So people thought the link was that they'd had some kind of affair. The Somerton man had gone to visit her, and she had his child, and that she rejected him. And there's a whole thing. It was a whole theory, but... But anyway, Jessica's son was called Robin, and he had, we think, similar teeth, and he also had similar ears, like people said. But when Chris and I looked at it, he seemed to resemble Jessica more than who we now know as Carl Webb. And so during this investigation of this theory, Professor Abbott meets the granddaughter of Robin Thompson, who he thinks might be linked by DNA to the Somerton man. Turns out she wasn't.
No.
So I asked Professor Abbott, you were previously convinced that the Somerton man was possibly the father of Robin Thompson. How did you feel when you discovered there was no link?
I was not convinced. All I said was that it was a compelling hypothesis that's sufficient for justifying an exhumation. If it appeared more certain, it is how the media like to present it. There was no link. I felt happy to know the truth. He's very like... I mean, he's completely right in everything he's saying. I'm not criticizing it at all. It's just funny reading through it. Because you hear these kind of things all the time. Like, that's not what I said. That's not what I did. That's just the mainstream media trying to turn everybody against me.
Not against him, but like when you do like research on a lot of missing people's cases, sometimes you'll see these kind of fantastical headlines, and it's nothing really to do with the case, but it's just a way to get it into the media. So I understand pushing that angle. But I do think, I think it was it ABC Australia? I'm not sure. It was an Australian news or media outlet. And they kind of portrayed it as in, Abbott thought that Rachel was definitely related to the Somerton man. Like, it was a big angle of this documentary that I watched. And maybe it's just the way that they sort of put it out because it sounds more compelling or interesting.
I think so. I mean, those kind of exciting words, if you will, get clicks. And, even with this case here, all the articles that we were sent, things like that, says Somerton man case solved, not Somerton man case possibly solved, but we still need to wait for a little bit more confirmation from the Australian police.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, but they did have a picture of the Somerton man in their kitchen, which I thought was quite funny. I mean, I get it. But
that's just what you want to see when, chopping up garlic for the pasta. Oh, look, dear,
I love this
grandfather.
Story. Yeah, but I actually think they did say something like that in the documentary. I don't know if it was just a bit tongue-in-cheek, just because they knew they had to get it out there to get eyes on it. But that was interesting. So I also asked, what does your wife Rachel feel about the discovery of the Somerton man's identity?
The same as me.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, presumably the answer to the first question that he gave, which was elated initially, but now realising that there's a lot more work to do now they've got their hooks into something.
Exactly. But I think it's Roy Webb being in the military is probably really helpful for research purposes, although he really had a devastating end. That's terrible, being a prisoner of war, and especially working on the Myanmar bridge, the River Kwai bridge. That's awful. So question number 9 that I asked him is, what is your theory now as to why Webb was in the area and how he died?
The only thing we have to go on is that he might have been looking for his estranged wife. It's not my theory. It's just all we've got to go on that is plausible. No idea how he died, not my area of expertise.
Yeah, he's not a theory guy.
No, not at all. Likes to stay in his
which is
lane.
Good. Yeah, which is good,
I'm not a theory guy unless I want you to dig up a dead body, and then I'm all about the theories.
But it makes sense, though. You can see how it got to this, can't you? Without the Russian spy angles and the codes and the tamam shirted piece of paper, it's just a guy dead on a beach, isn't it?
Yeah, and the authorities, there's obviously such an interest in the case online, and lots of people constantly contact the police with questions and things like that. So it was a high-profile case that could get solved. But if it was just some other less high-profile case, then maybe they wouldn't have exhumed it based on theories.
Yeah. The last question I asked him was, where will you go from here with the investigation?
Find out more about Charles Webb.
Yeah, no point in asking, was there?
Yeah. No. I mean, you ask a simple question, you get a simple answer.
Yeah, my fault.
It seems, with Dr. Abbott.
That's my bad.
Yeah.
So shout out to Professor Abbott for taking time to answer my questions. I really do appreciate it. And congratulations on finding out the identity, we think, of the Somerton man. Good job.
Yeah. And it's especially well done on your excellent timing just after we'd released the episode as well.
Yeah, he must have been so excited when he finally had a name, and he knows family members and there's these military records. So we are finding out a bit about Charles Webb. Apparently he didn't like being called Carl. That's why I went by Charles.
Now he's got a name and there's something to get into. There will be more that comes out about this. And he can really narrow the search down. But like he said, it was all concentrating on getting a name. Yes, I've got the name, but now I've got to do all of this extra work. But this seems to be Professor's kind of life's cause, if you will, to find out all of this. So good on him, really. He's closed one chapter and opened another.
Yeah. But I'm excited to see what else they come out with. I have one little bit of information left, and this is something that I just found online. I didn't find this myself. It was a user on the Somerton Man Facebook group that Professor Abbott runs, but I can't remember which user it is. But it says, and I sent this to Professor Abbott to confirm, and it says, it's from The Age on October 5th, 1951, and it says, this must have been like a post in a newspaper or something, and it says, to Carl Webb, formerly of Bromby Street, South Yarra, but now of parts unknown. Take notice that your wife, Dorothy Jean Webb, has instituted divorce proceedings against you on the ground of desertion, and that unless you enter an appearance in the Prothanatory's office of the Supreme Court at Melbourne on or before the 29th day of October 1951, the case may proceed in your absence and you may be ordered to pay costs. So it seems like his wife was putting out a call to him through legal representation to divorce him.
And this was after he died, right?
Yep, he's been dead for a couple of years at this point. So obviously this indicates that he was missed, but he was assumed to have just run off or something.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds very much like a last kind of desperate... I mean, presumably she wanted to move on with her life. She needed to get a divorce as a result of that. And
exactly,
you kind of need the other person to sign a document to get that divorce. So I guess this was what they had to do in absence of her ex-husband, was kind of put this call out, and then that might allow them to get the divorce.
Exactly. Now, there is one more thing, and basically what happened is there was a football photograph from 1921 that had the names of all the players, and they were around 16 or 17 at this point, and it has all the names of the players, and there's a C web. It's the Swinburne Technical College under 16 football team photo from 1921, and there's a C web listed. But in this picture, the names aren't in order of the way that they're standing in the rows. So people are like, it's not confirmed, but people are like, could he be somewhere in this picture? Because remember, we don't have a living image of Charles Webb. So Chris, I'm going to send you this picture, and you can tell me if you see anyone there that resembles the Somerton Man.
I'll try and spot the Somerton Man in this picture. Okay, so we've got a fairly typical football style or sports photograph with everybody kind of stood there. There's a guy in a suit in the middle who's presumably the coach or manager of this team, and it does have in the middle a little board that lists all of the players on, so it's actually physically on in the photograph as opposed to written on a document. Now I'm looking through this, so person who takes my eye immediately is back row, third from the right, the guy with the sort of, want of a better word, afro-ish hair.
Oh, really? Is that who you...
That's just my initial gut reaction. As I look at it, I'm realizing it might not be. It could also be the person on the next row down to his right as well. Yeah,
like, it's really strange when you look at this picture. Yeah. You can see a little bit of Charles Webb or the Somerton Man in a lot of these guys.
Yeah. I mean...
I don't know if it's a style thing.
It's probably a style, and also... You know, you're looking at pictures of people in their youth as well, and when he died, he was well into his 40s, right? Or was it 50s?
Yeah, they're saying like 40s to 50s. They're not exactly sure, but...
So, you know, when you see pictures of somebody of that age back when they were a teenager, you quite often go, whoa, like, you know, you had different, you had an afro or whatever it was. Like, yeah, so there's a lot of interesting options in there, but I guess you could sit with the picture and try and compare it, but at the same time, that might not mean that he's the C Webb who is now the Somerton Man. It could be a different person who isn't in this picture at all.
So on the Facebook group that Dr Abbott runs, there's one user who, well, I'll let you read the comment that he wrote first, Chris. And this is Phil Tarrant.
And Phil says, I came here after seeing the footy pic on ABC page. I do professional photo restoration and colorization, and as soon as I looked at the boys, I knew it was the guy bottom left. Layering the reconstruction or death mask over him matches up easily. As I mentioned here, the chin crease from the death mask and the ear shape and general physiognomy matches perfectly. The smile of a reconstruction is distraction. You can see from the other pics that his mouth hangs at the outsides, fitting in with the chin crease below the bottom lip. Also, the jawline is a perfect match. Sample below has colour from mock-up, very roughly applied to the black and white pic to aid in visualization.
And here's the image, Chris.
Yeah, I can see that. I can also... Jury's out for me on that, I think. I mean, it could be, but at the same time, it could be any of them. I'm not... Yeah. I don't know. Let us know what you think out there. Who do you think it is? Do you think it's the guy in the bottom left? Or could it be any of the others in the picture? Is it Afro Man? Let us know.
We will put these images on Instagram at d.s.radio, so you can take a look at them there, just to make it easier for you to put all the visuals in one place. And then you guys can let us know what you think it is. Like, do you agree with Phil?
Yeah.
Or do you think the Somerton Man is maybe not even in this picture? Because that could be the case too.
Yeah, for me, I mean, yes, it's a compelling argument, I suppose, but at the same time, it didn't jump out at me as like, yes. I'm no expert in this, but it might just be the same sort of thing as last time when we weren't convinced by the ears and the teeth of Robin.
Yeah.
I think you need more than just a sea web to go off, as silly as that sounds, because there's just too many sea webs that could be out there, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. So, Chris, lastly, just to finish up on this, speaking of visuals, we have a picture of Roy Webb, the Somerton man's brother. So if you could take a look at that. Now, I think this looks like the Somerton man.
Yeah, that looks a lot more like the Somerton man. It's got a face structure, but obviously we're looking at a guy who was much closer in age to the Somerton man when he died in this picture. But yes, definitely. This appears to be a war record of some kind.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and it's got him listed as being deceased on here, and the some codes, and it seems that he's about 5'6", maybe 5'8". About 5'8", according to this picture.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. That's probably the closest reference that you're going to get, I think, is his brother, unless some actual pictures of Carl Webb turn up, which they might do because they've now got a family connection.
Which I really hope we get. Yeah, I really hope we could find some, like, see an actual picture confirmed to be him. Like, that's what I want now at this point.
We'll stay in touch with the professor, and I'm sure that you'll probably find some coming sooner rather than later, because it seems the floodgates have opened on this. It was just March that they managed to pin the name down, and now they're getting all sorts of information and family connections and so on. So it wouldn't surprise me if this time next year, if we did another update, that there would be even more to do to update everybody on about the case.
Yeah, the sleuths are going ham, so keep up the good work. History-loving people who seem to be digging up all this stuff. Good job. And hopefully we'll get a picture of Charles Webb at some point. There's got to be one, hasn't there? Come on, somewhere.
Well, there has to be one out there. I mean, there's at least got to be a wedding photograph out there, you think?
Or maybe when they opened the bakery or something, maybe it was in a local paper. Something like that, you know?
There must be something. I mean, I know that cameras weren't as available as they are now. Certainly nobody had smartphones and things like that. But you'd think at certain events that there would be photographs taken.
Yeah, exactly. So I just hope there's some pictures floating about somewhere. And maybe he's in that picture from the football team. Who knows? And would that explain the calves? Did he continue with his footy love?
Well, that's it. I mean, maybe they got it wrong on the ballerina thing, and it was just football.
Ballerina. Russian ballerina.
Russian ballerina Lord. Who was also doubling up as a spy in their free time. Yeah.
With a penchant for pasties.
Penchant for pasties. And on that bombshell,
yes.
That is the end of our Somerton Man update. So thank you all for listening. And Linz, thank you very much for presenting us with this update. I'm sure everybody found it very interesting to find out what happened since we presented the mystery a little over a month ago. Yeah,
I know that I'm interested. And we may have sounded like we interrupted each other a little bit in this episode. That's obviously because of the distance and, But yeah, we tried our best to do this, one side of the world to the other. So hopefully it comes out all right.
I think it's. I've listened to the other one that we did. Although I've been editing the other episode we did, and it came out just fine with no real issues. There wasn't even any breakups on it. So Great. It should be all good.
Great. Well, Thanks for joining me, Chris, all the way from Japan.
You're very welcome. And thank you for joining us all the way from Sweden in this virtual space we now encounter. Speaking of virtual spaces, we will have an episode about that coming up in the future. If you listen to the Q&A episode, you know what we're talking about.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will see you next time in the Dystopian Simulation.
Bye.
Bye. And in the background, Chris, we have the Warpedens theme song.
We do. It's time for the small boy to go up some cobbles and bring me some bread.
Go on to shop.
Go on.
So, Chris, what is that Warpedens theme tune in the background?
It's just telling everybody that it's 6 o'clock. This goes off at 6, and then at midday, there's the Silent Hill siren that goes off.
What? Where is this from? Where's it coming from?
It's coming from the town hall, which is just across the road from where I am right
Oh,
now.
that's so
It just
cute.
blasts it across loudspeakers across the town. Not all
I love
Japanese
that.
towns have it, but some do, and it's quite cute. This is quite cute. However, when that Silent Hill siren goes off and it just goes...
What's that for?
It's just to tell everybody it's midday, lunchtime.
Oh, emergency lunchtime. Nice. It's nice to get a little snippet of your Japan life right now.
There you go.